Hi, and welcome to episode 84 of Toward a Better Life. This is your host, Kevin Pennell. Think of me as your guide while we travel together, creating more fulfilling, rewarding, and healthier lives. You won't need much for the trek, just an open mind, spirit, and heart. Toward a Better Life podcast features like-minded people sharing their stories, ideas, and activities on what we can do to generate a better life individually and collectively. If you enjoyed the episode, if you learned something really good today, please consider following the show, subscribing through your favorite podcast platform like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, whatever platform you use, and please be sure to leave a review. Also, with the expenses rising as they do, please consider sending a donation through PayPal to my email address, kevin@towardabetterlife.com. Please help this podcast reach out to even more people who are interested in moving toward a better life. I'm talking with Beth Sandlin about Pilates in this episode. Pilates helps the body integrate to a healthier life, promoting stress reduction, effective breath work, and even bringing joy and happiness into your life. Beth merges her passion for Pilates, health, and trauma-informed practices, aiming to uncover the joy and beauty in each day through movement. As the founder of Trifecta Pilates, she offers a wide range of online Pilates classes through YouTube and the Trifecta Pilates app, bringing Pilates into homes worldwide, emphasizing the importance of moving in alignment with your nervous system. Stay tuned as Beth Sandlin shares Pilates in Depth on this episode of Toward a Better Life. I'm here to welcome Beth Sandlin, and Beth is here with us today to squeeze every drop of joy out of life and share that zest with us. And I just love that line. I saw it in a bio that you had, and I said, that kind of sums it up. Welcome, Beth.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here today.
Thank you. Why don't you just start off in giving us a little bit of background on Beth Sandlin and what brought you into working with yoga and so forth?
Yeah, so at a very young age, I had cancer. I was 20 years old, and I made a commitment to myself that I never wanted to feel that way again, where just didn't have the energy for daily activities. I didn't feel good in my body, and I was going to do everything in my power to feel amazing without deprivation, because we know that well-being and squeezing joy out of life is not about deprivation whatsoever. And so it really led me down the path to exploring different lifestyle shifts that were in alignment with my path at the time. And that's evolved over the years, of course. And it led me to try yoga, and I'm a yoga teacher as well, but my main passion and path is Pilates. I've been teaching Pilates for over 20 years now, because it really is such an empowering way in which we can feel good in our bodies. And I'm a firm believer that when we feel good in our bodies, that we just are happier throughout our day.
That's a great outlook. And Beth, what is Pilates? There are so many different things that we look at with movement and things that are associated with yoga. And I've heard Pilates a lot. Can you just kind of give us a short rundown on what exactly that is?
Sure. Pilates is a mind-body method, so similar to yoga in that regard, but different in that we're not just focusing on postures as yoga does, but exercises instead. And the exercises, many of them are very holistic. So rather than just focusing on strength, one exercise can be strengthening one area of the body, working flexibility of another, and mobility of the body as well, which is what makes Pilates so beautiful, and what also makes it so challenging sometimes. I've had a lot of people say to me, well, I can hold a plank for a minute. Why can't I do the roll-up exercise, which is a traditional Pilates exercise? And it's because it's packaged in a unique way where we're not just looking at strength, as I said, we're looking at different elements of really more of a well-rounded workout routine for our body. And this just takes time. And it's one of the things for people who really enjoy Pilates, what brings us back to it time and time again, because we can always go a little bit deeper. In a lot of times in Pilates, people will say it's a good core workout. And even though it does offer an amazing core workout, it's more than just ab exercises. It really is a total body overall workout. And we can do this either with specialized apparatus that people may see within a Pilates studio, or simply by using a mat, which is really what I've been specializing in for the past 10 or so years.
Okay. And the things that I've heard recently a couple of times is sometimes people with, I'm going to say, challenging, I'm going to use the word disabilities. Yeah, are people that are challenged physically, are they able to do Pilates as well?
Anyone is able to do Pilates. It ranges from people who maybe they just got out of physical therapy for a surgery or injury, and they'll work maybe one-on-one with a Pilates teacher at first, to high-end athletes like people in the NFL. And so it really is a flexible and adaptable system. It's what we really like to focus on is what is going to be a positive movement experience for someone? Is that going to be a slower pace session where we're working maybe with more foundational movements and understanding a little bit more simplified? So it is really beneficial for someone, or maybe someone has been moving with Pilates for a really long time. There's no injuries or disabilities that they are working with, and it can be more of a vigorous workout. So that's one element that we really appreciate about Pilates, is that we can turn up the dial of intensity, turn down the dial of intensity, either for physical considerations, as I just covered, or it can even be that maybe our nervous system might need something that's a little bit more calming and soothing. And so that's why we choose a workout that's going to be a little bit more gentle.
Say, so what I'm hearing is I'm going to guess that you do a fair amount of customized work with people, almost like a one-on-one from time to time, to kind of be with them with where they are and go from there. And if they're in a group setting, to try and take some time to work with that person. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And that's what I started with, working really one-on-one with people in very small group settings. And what I realized is my passion was to bring Pilates to more people. And I have shifted over the years to working all virtually now. I do a little bit in person, but not much. And what I focus on is how can I support someone who may never have the opportunity to work with me one-on-one, so that they have a variety of workouts to move with, so they have a deeper understanding of Pilates. And so I teach very restorative sessions and shorter pace classes, because sometimes we just don't have the time for something longer in length, to full length classes that are more challenging. So there's a lot of different options. What people have found is, as they keep moving with the classes that I'm teaching, is they're starting to understand and tune into what is going to be most very valuable for them. That process takes time, because so often with workouts, it's always been you need a full length, hard workout in order for it to be beneficial. And what the research shows actually is that sometimes those shorter length workouts are just as beneficial. And even focusing on deep breathing rather than a strengthening workout can be incredibly helpful for our body as well.
Yeah, I know that I have a kind of a daily routine. I'll do some Tai Chi and so forth. I tend to work a lot with Tai Chi and Qigong, and I actually even do movement while I'm doing body work with people. They don't see it, but I'm doing different stances, I'm doing different flows and stuff like that. And that's another one. Some people would ask, how do you stay in the condition that you do? And I said, I'm always doing stuff. Can I do an hour workout and just strictly Tai Chi and Qigong? Absolutely. Can you do karate? Yes, I can. But I kind of like to blend my day and focus my day around movement as opposed to just, okay, now from 7 to 7:30, I'm going to do this. And that's fine. That's great. I like to do it. I guess it has something to do with the background that I had from martial arts. Is martial arts, the way I look at it, is it's something that is a life involving process. It's not just on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6:30. And you you, I think, have that same viewpoint with doing Pilates and the movement that you do, incorporating it into your life.
I really do. And I love that personal share because that's one element that often was missing when I was working in person is people would come to me exactly like you're saying, Tuesday and Thursday, those were their Pilates days. And I realized that sometimes they needed something in between. And it wasn't always a full hour session with me. It was more kind of sprinkled throughout the week or sprinkled throughout the day. And I say this all the time for people who, come to my group classes. They'll ask me questions, what's something I can do? It's like, well, what exercise do you really enjoy? A movement that makes sense. So for sometimes it's not getting down on the mat where we classically do a lot of Pilates exercises, but instead some of the standing work that we do and infusing that into their day, just like you're infusing Tai Chi into your day while you're doing your massage therapy work. And this is something that just takes time to uncover and explore. And I encourage people, no matter if it's Tai Chi, Pilates, or something else, that the longer you stay with movement, the more you're going to see how you can maybe take an exercise or two or a stance or even deep breathing and use that more throughout your day as a resource so that you end the day with just as much energy as you started the day. And that's something that we don't consider sometimes when we move our body is that workouts and movement should be beneficial for us, not only for strength gains and we can maintain balance. And there's all these physical benefits of moving our body. And yet there's an energetic benefit as well.
Yeah. So this is just delightful. I'm enjoying this a lot, and I hope our listeners are too, because we're on the same path and we're on the same wavelength on all of this, Beth. And I will sometimes share some stretches and some activities that people can do. One of the number one things I run into, and it's no doubt that people are going to say, "Oh yeah, I know all about that." But typically people will come in, and I'll put you to the test, Beth. When somebody comes in to see me in massage, and I'll say, "So, how you doing today?" And we go through that part. So, how can I help you? And what seems to be maybe an area that I need to work on today? What would you say perhaps the number one area would be, or areas?
I would say when people come to Pilates, one of the number one areas is back. And the first question is, well, okay, well, I've seen, a doctor about this because maybe there is some underlying diagnosis that would be really helpful to know for us to work with so we can work safely with the body. But most people, it's, yes, I have. And we know that generalized back pain, which I'm sure you're well aware of as a massage therapist, is a real occurrence for so many people. They experience it, whether it's an acute phase of their life or at some point through their life or maybe more consistently. And what happens a lot of times is with Pilates in particular, people think, oh, I just need to work my core because that's going to help my back. And this is where we circle back to what is Pilates so much more than a good core workout. Sure, working the core can be beneficial, but at the end of the day, Pilates is also about alignment and understanding, axial elongation, deeper awareness, and posture. And it's not that we have to hold posture. That's kind of the old way of looking at posture. It's we want to be able to move in and out of different postures. So if we notice ourselves slouching throughout the day, well, can we just do a quick check-in? Ground down if we're seated on the sits bones, if we're standing on our feet, and find a sense of elongation with easefulness. And I think that's the power of Pilates, is that not only offers us more awareness, but those tools and resources to shift from something maybe that's not going to serve us in the long run.
So working the movement into daily activities and not just focus from 6 to 6:30, which is still fine. It's nothing wrong with that. But as you check in with yourself and you find yourself doing something, because one of the number one things we run into, and people would ask, about, injuries and that kind of stuff. And I said, well, one of the number one things that you run into is where you consistently do one particular small activity, and that activity can just raise its ugly head eventually. And one of them that everybody does, there's a couple of them, but one that just came to mind is a mouse or a trackpad. And they wonder why it is that their right shoulder and right wrist are really creating problems. And the number one thing I ask them, I said, so how long have you been working at a desk with a mouse? And they just look at me like, are you psychic? And the other one that people run into is, well, um, I don't understand, but and I've seen this a lot, and I'm sure you have too, Beth, is they'll start to have a problem pretty much at the base of the skull where we would talk about the occipital ridge, and that can be progressive from that point all the way down to your tailbone. And the number one thing that I run into with that is it's what we do every day. It's a little thing called a cell phone. And if I bend my head, if I bend my neck and I look down at the cell phone to do whatever, I'm affecting that whole area. And depending on how frequently I do it, it's going to determine about how much pain I have. Do you run into that?
I do, and this is actually why just this year within the membership and app, I've instilled a monthly motion, and that's focusing on something very particular in the body, going a little bit deeper so people can understand how they move on and off the mat. And interestingly enough, coming up, we have one focusing on the neck because it's so common. People have issues with neck, but also, as you mentioned, it goes down the back. So a lot of times, what you and I both know is people experience pain in one area, but that doesn't mean that's where it's stemming from. And I found the more people can understand these links, the more helpful it is. Because here's the thing, people come to you for massage therapy or they come to Pilates and they want to fix, right? And we want
Mm-hmm.
this to get better. But if
Mm-hmm.
they go right back to their patterns that contribute to that, they're going to keep coming back, or they're going to keep having, in my case with Pilates, like, I just keep getting neck pain during Pilates. It doesn't feel good. Well, one, if you're experiencing that off the mat, then it's going to be very hard to do a workout and not experience that. And that's where sometimes slowing down and understanding our bodies and our movement patterns more is so helpful, because it can inform, oh, well, the small adjustment with my head can be really helpful when I'm seated or laying down on my mat, so I feel more at ease. Or this 5-minute class focusing on just my shoulders and neck can loosen things up a little bit and prepare my body more fully, either for the day or for a Pilates class. So I have really found that's one of the benefits of Pilates, just as you were saying with massage therapy, is that you're not just giving someone a massage and then they, walk out. There's a little bit of education in there as well of how to personalize this, whether it's, we're on our phones or the mouse, or for someone else, it could be the way that they're holding their child, or just they shift their weight a little bit for another reason, like an ankle injury in the past, whatever it may be. And this awareness goes such a long way to longevity with not only our workout program, but how we feel well beyond one workout.
Yeah. And it goes back again to repetitious movements. The smallest movement can have a great impact. And I really appreciate you bringing up the point that just because my pain seems to be focused in the lower part of my back, that doesn't necessarily mean that's where it started. And it just wants to rear its head there because that's where the pain is happy. Use that statement with tongue in cheek, because that's what it boils down to. It's gonna identify the weakest part of the body, and that's where it's gonna go. And if it's your low back, it's your low back. If it's your shoulder, just your shoulders. And a lot of times I like to bring people into an activity, and it sounds like you do too, where I can do this while I'm at my desk. I can do this if I just stand up for, I tell people all the time, go walk. If you're working from home, go grab yourself a drink of water. Just get up from the chair, get up from the desk, move, you know. And if we don't move, there's going to be a problem. In recovery, there's another one to think about. Post-surgical trauma. I remember a statement that was made quite some time ago. Maybe you could even share a little bit from your perspective on this, Beth. But I'm going to say for every week that I am recovering and I can't move my arm for every week that that arm is in that position because I've broken my collarbone, how long does it take for that to actually recover once that cast system is off or once that support system is off? Are you familiar with that one?
I am not.
Okay, so basically it's almost like a mathematical thing. And it's a little scary because sometimes I'll talk about immobility, and if you have immobilized a particular place of your body for say a week, typically it can take up to 2 to 3 weeks to get that same mobility back. Not to improve it, just get it back to where it was. And so that's why it's so important. And I appreciate what you're talking about with the surgical stuff is it's not a bad thing. I mean, get your doctor's approval and make sure that we're where we need to be and we're not gonna injure an area that's been surgically cared for, but get it to move, wouldn't you say?
100%. And this is something I am personally managing right now. I have a really severe ankle sprain. And so I went in, saw the doctor, and I asked very specific questions. You know, what can I do? I know I really can't walk. In fact, I'm practicing walking in a normal gait because my gait is really off. And that in and of itself is like kind of pushing the edge. But I asked, can I do like cardiovascular work on a cycle bike? Can I do on an elliptical machine where my foot is more stationary? And I mentioned, I'm incorporating movement, but I'm noticing some days I pushed a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to do nothing because I know the research validates that we want to incorporate movement, whether it's ankle, knee, or some other part of the body as soon as possible. It's just, we really have to feel into it. And I feel one of the challenges is with our body, we haven't been encouraged to feel into our body, especially when it comes to movement and workouts. It's been do the most challenging exercise, just push through the pain. And that's not what it is.
Mm-hmm.
We have to find that edge. And so for everyone, that edge is going to be a little bit different. And I encourage people, if you're just getting back into working out because you took some time off, you were incredibly busy, or for surgery or for something else that's going on, start slow, start incredibly
Yes.
short, and start easier. So simple and easy. You're like, I can't believe this is a workout. And see how your body responds because it's so much better than the next day to slowly add on rather than doing too much and you're either incredibly sore and you don't feel like moving again for a few days or injuring your body again.
Yeah. And, I don't understand. I was running 5 miles, 5 miles at a crack and I injured myself. Yeah, but I did 5 miles at a crack. I don't know why I can't do 5 miles now. And I hurt after 2.5 miles. Well, that's your limit. Work within your limitations. I had another rule of thumb that I've gone by is that if I'm showing some particular movement in Tai Chi, there's a movement that's called cloud hands, and it is a martial move. But if you really look at cloud hands is working the entire shoulder capsule, and it's doing a wonderful job at it, even though it's called cloud hands. And I discovered that by looking at it, and they say, well, how many of those should I do? And depending on the level of what they're working with, I'll say, if it's just a little sore, maybe do 10 reps of it. And then I tell them, after you've done the 10 reps, this is important. Underscore this. Write it in red. Check in with yourself 2 hours after you've done the workout. If you're not in pain, you're fine. If you hurt or you feel a little sore or a little stiff by doing 10, back it off. And usually I tell people cut it in half. So you go from 10 to 5. And you might even give it a rest for a day and not even do it the next day. And just work with your body. And it's like you're talking about. It's an awareness of your body and really become one with your body. It is your body.
It is. And I found for a lot of people, myself as well, when I was starting a more like integrated, holistic approach, it just takes time because especially if you come from more of a workout background or, you know, even when I was in PE classes, right? It's just do this, follow along. This is what you should be doing. And what we found is that that's not always going to be beneficial for our bodies. In fact, my massage therapist works with a lot of people who have been injured doing yoga because they're
Hmm.
doing yoga, they're doing a chaturanga practice over and over and over again. And their teacher, because of the classes they're going to, never slow down to show them how to do the chaturanga properly. And
Right.
exactly like with that little mouse hand that you gave an example of prior, it's that repetitive pattern over and over. So here people are going to a yoga practice because they feel it's so beneficial. They wind up injuring themselves and then going to a massage therapist trying to work through that injury. And it's if we just take the time to slow down and understand that movement, tuning in, it's going to take us so much longer, take us so much further. Because the truth is, in order for movement to be valuable, we want it to stay with us for life. And those workouts, that we do, that slower build is going to be so much more valuable. So I love the advice that you give. If it's too much, just turn back that dial of intensity, turn back the repetitions, and then we can slowly add on as it makes sense.
Yeah, because you know, generations or decades or whatever ago, and you had mentioned it too. Oh, just push through it. Come on, wimp. You can do this. No, I can't. Just say it. And I've heard of situations where people and the instructors mean well, and I understand that, but sometimes they push a little too hard, and not everyone is going to be able to respond that way. And not everyone is going to be that physically able to do it because they may have physical limitations. I tell that when I've taught classes myself. Just because I can turn myself into a pretzel with a Tai Chi move doesn't mean you can, particularly if you just started this and don't expect yourself to. So, yeah. I get it. So, what are some specific exercises or routines that help relieve that number one word, stress, and promote a calming nervous system, Beth?
You know, this goes back to personalization and really tuning into what is beneficial for us, not only for our nervous system, but our physical body. And
Hmm.
I bring this up because when I first got into really understanding more about trauma and the nervous system, there was a big drive, focus on meditation, focus on yoga. And those were really the two modalities that were suggested. And I realized, though, that not everybody appreciated those, that it didn't resonate with where their bodies were at, nor their nervous system. Now, the research is actually showing us that everything from something nourishing and slower, like gentle stretches, Tai Chi, to deep breathing has benefit for the nervous system, all the way up to something much more challenging like running or high intensity interval training. And I have to tell you, I've worked with a lot of clients who running was their one element that helped reduce their stress levels and calm their nervous system. One of the concerns for the clients who I've seen who that has been like, oh yes, that's really what's valuable, is they were pushing too much to chronically over an extended period of time, and they started getting joint issues and damage. And their doctor would say, you really need to cut back on running. And they didn't have another technique that was working for them. So they kept pushing through. And then years and years later, they come to Pilates and they want to no longer be in the pain that they're in because of what happened. I bring this up because we may all, I feel like, resonate with one end of the spectrum or be somewhere in between where we have that one thing that works really well for us. And then once we have that amazing, can we figure out what's going to be another strategy? Because let me tell you, if you're working full time, like it doesn't always make sense to go on a long run when you're stressed out. You may need to go on a short walk. You may be taking a few deep breaths or doing something with Tai Chi. A simple 1 minute exercise could be more valuable. So I encourage people to tune in. What strategies are they already using that are healthy for their bodies? And then when do they need to find something a little bit different? And that's what I have found for a lot of people when they start tuning into their nervous system, is they realize sometimes it makes sense for them to do something more vigorous to expel that energy. And other times they're really ready for something much more gentle for their bodies. And they go right away to maybe a short stretching routine followed by a meditation.
Mm-hmm. You've mentioned it several times so far. So, how important is breathing?
Vitally important. This is something that, um, you know, sometimes people have resistance, like, oh, I don't like breathing, Beth, like focusing on deep breathing. It actually causes anxiety for me. And that's true. That's a real experience. But what we know is we are humans. We are able to learn. I'm not saying for someone who is maybe that breathing induces anxiety that you focus right away on a 20-minute deep breathing meditation, but can we just foster more awareness of the breath? We are breathing all day automatically. We don't have to think about it. And yet we also know that with dysregulated breathing, which many of us have, but that's not wonderful for core activation, for pelvic floor. Both of those are really important for our backs. And interestingly enough, I've had many people who have gone to physical therapy, friends of mine who come back and say, I went for back pain and they're telling me I need to focus on deep breathing. And that's their very first exercise that the physical therapist gives them as homework to do. And rather than waiting till we're at that point where we aren't feeling good, let's focus on it sooner rather than later. And the beautiful thing is we can incorporate it into movement practices like Tai Chi, Pilates, or we can just focus on that as a practice in and of itself. And there has been times for my clients, for myself as well, where that was the best movement practice, is focusing on the power of deep, full deep breathing. And this isn't just belly breathing as it's traditionally talked about in yoga. It's a little bit more expansive and more of like, think of it as a sphere or like a full circle breathing deep into the body. And what a lot of people find in the beginning is it can't, like it feels stuck and constricted. And so it goes back to just giving ourselves time, being a little bit more gentle, not feeling like we're in a race to focus on deep breathing or get it right, because that element of relaxation, and you have probably more knowledge of this because you work with the body, where you can feel when there's some resistance of people who maybe like a certain area of their body doesn't want to release, but you keep just gently or sometimes a little bit more deeply working with it, and finally it does. And it's, oh my gosh, like that just feels better. It's the same with breathing, is sometimes there is a resistance in our body because of the muscle tension and patterns that we hold, where it doesn't allow us to breathe deeply. And if we just gently stick with it, more than just one session I'm talking about here, that finally we get to a point where, oh, now I've experienced it, and we can tap back into that a little more consistently.
Yeah. And I want to stick with that, but you mentioned a term, dysregulated breathing. What exactly is that?
That tends to be higher up and much more shallow, short, and constricted. And I've noticed as well, and this is just from my personal experience, because I can definitely have this breathing pattern that can be really exacerbated, is the back muscles tend to be tighter in this regard. And so we have to kind of, where is that posture with ease? Sometimes just even laying down on your back, legs elevated by a chair or like a table is really helpful to get the back more at ease and in a restful state rather than trying this seated. And then from there, we can think what areas are working in the body that maybe can release and relax. So if you ever, for instance, for listeners, gone and had a massage, sometimes they'll work areas that you didn't even realize were holding tension. And I found, whether you're working with a massage therapist or moving the body in some way or just focusing on awareness, that when we ask the body to release, what areas are holding on, if we give ourselves that time to do this, eventually we can start finding our patterns of where we tend to hold tension in the body.
Hmm. So a couple of things really quick. When I've taught breathing before, I mentioned to people, I said, so, and just like you're saying, we do it every day. And probably I'd say the lion's share tend to be, using your term that I like, that I've never really gotten that one before, dysregulated, because that's exactly what it is. Everything I'm breathing is from basically my solar plex, not even my solar plexus up. And I don't go any further than that. And I don't understand why I can't catch a full breath. It's because you just don't. And your body gets used to a certain way. So I tell them, if you want to learn how to breathe, one of the first things to do the next time you come in contact or see a baby, we're talking about from birth up until probably 6 or 8 months. If the baby's sleeping, watch them. Watch a baby breathe because the baby engages the whole body in that breath. And we don't do that because we're in a hurry. I just need to get, okay, I'm done. No, it's a little more than that. And I've heard people talk about some other techniques where they talk about breathing in a 4 count. And I've heard the reflection of what you just shared about circular breathing. Call it what you will, find the technique. And this is what I really appreciate you bringing out, Beth. Find a technique that works for you and work with it. If it gets boring, change it up a little bit. Instead of, like, I just learned something new, I've always taught inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. Inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. Circular breathing. Yeah, right. Okay, that's great. I learned something different. Breathe in through your nose and exhale through your nose. That's a different process. And your brain sets up something a little bit different. I'm not sure exactly what fires and how it works, but it's really an interesting process. And then the other one that I have often talked about is do the count. You breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you exhale, but you wait a moment. Sometimes I've even heard breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold it for 1, 2, 3, 4, and let it out, 1, 2, 3, 4. So try different methods to work with the breath because it is so important, and we neglect it.
Yeah, we really do. And I found I used to not focus on breathing. Interestingly enough, Pilates was all about the exercises. And I realized once I focused more on deep breathing, well, one, it supported me when I couldn't work out. And in turn, that the workouts actually became more powerful. And there's research on that as well, that when people can breathe deeply, even with very vigorous workout, and breathing deeply is simply bringing oxygen into our body. When we have that fuller, deeper breath, of course, that's going to help us with our stamina and strength with workouts, let alone it's really beautiful for our nervous system and reduces stress and increases our prefrontal cortex. There's so many benefits of it. It's just a matter of it takes time, and it is a skill that maybe seems a little bit like, oh no, but I want to get to the good stuff. We can't get to the good stuff without the foundational work of deep breathing. And what's beautiful about it is you don't have to have a long practice. It doesn't have to be a workout. It can be while you're doing the dishes.
Hmm.
Or someone who I know, she does this every day on her morning commute. So she's figured out a way, where in her day does it make sense to integrate this? There's other people who I know who really like this, focusing on it as an evening unwind routine, because it just helps to kind of detach from the day a little bit and ease into the evening.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people have realized, is that so many times they get into Pilates because, they wanted to feel better in their body. They wanted to like regain vitality. And they start realizing and recognizing over the course of time that it turns into more than just a good workout. And they're incorporating these small strategies in personal ways throughout the day. And I feel like that's where the value of movement and understanding what's going to work well for us is really valuable.
So there's a couple of terms that I know that's associated with your work. One is trauma-informed Pilates approach. What exactly is that?
It's recognizing the prevalence and impact that trauma can have. And a common question I get asked is, are you just talking about physical trauma? We've already talked about physical trauma here today with injuries that people have had. Of course, there's that element, but trauma, the word encapsulates more than an injury or what happens to us physically. This can be as far back as childhood trauma, abuse, or neglect, or what's going on in our life currently. And what we know is that the body remembers, even if our thinking mind doesn't remember, our brain also remembers. And this is brain that we aren't really aware of, the brain that processes, breathing and reacts to things automatically for us, thank goodness. And so when we start approaching Pilates or really any movement, our life with a little bit more compassion, sometimes our patterns were there because it's what kept us safe, we maybe move more kindly. So if we realize that we have really rigid and tight shoulders, rather than thinking that's a bad thing, we can move with that thinking, okay, it's trying to help me in some way. What is that trying to tell me? For some people, it's simply, your life is overwhelming right now. You have a lot on your plate. You're really busy, and not to neglect that at all. But that's a little bit different than someone who has maybe really tense shoulders because in childhood, they lived in an environment that wasn't safe. That's a deeper ingrained response. And so if we can just say, what was that doing for us? Even if we can't remember it, how does it feel? What's the experience if we release and relax? And this is what I've realized for a lot of people. The moment there is a relaxation, they start tensing up again. Because that is their set point. And that set point, we know, can change over time with understanding of the patterns of the body and moving slowly. So often in Pilates, I found, and this was definitely me in my younger days when I first got started with it, like I wanted to do it right. I wanted to do it perfectly. And all that caused was extra tension in my breathing and my muscles. And Pilates does not let you power through. And for many years, I was stuck with like, can't do those more challenging exercises. What's going on? And I realized that, wait a minute, I need to turn back the dial of intensity, not actually strive for those more challenging aspects, and work where I am right now with, to be honest, very simple exercises, foundational level work. And I completely ignored the more challenging work. And once I went back to that after a year, it came with so much more ease because I was working more in alignment with what my body truly needed at the time. So I know that was a little segue away from a trauma-informed approach, but at the end of the day, it kind of encapsulates it where we aren't trying to just push through or ignore, but really honor and respect where we are right now.
Yeah, so the trauma work that we can do is like you said, it's not just physical, but it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's mental, it is, physical as well, but to encapsulate the entire process and feel where does my body respond, where, and I would tell people often, even with massage, check in with yourself and see where you're feeling this. And that's where meditation comes in. If you really want to know what's going on with your body, stop for a minute. And sometimes it's that quick. And you know that, Beth, and I know that, and there's a lot of other people out there that know that. If you just stop for a minute and just be and just check in with yourself, close your eyes, you know, shut off the phone, shut off the, whatever distractions you've got. And sometimes I've referred to it as the inner physician. And so, where am I tight? How am I breathing? And it's just little things, just the little things. And they can become, really problematic if I don't simply address them. So that's great advice. That's great advice,
Yeah.
Beth.
And something I wanted to mention about feeling into our bodies, because
Mm-hmm.
this actually ties really well with trauma, is that for a lot of people, we've been told not to feel into our bodies. We even
Mm.
just hear stories of like, um, don't cry, we're going to give you something to cry about. That's telling a child basically ignore what you're experiencing right now, hold it all in. And whether it's because of that or because we live in this constant, seems like hamster wheel, just go from one activity to another, there is a detachment that a lot of people experience in their body. And for a lot of people I've worked with, it's like, well, I can't feel that area. And so I wanted to bring that up. If people have a hard time feeling into like a certain area of their body or just their overall sensations overall, that's okay, because it's a process for your body to start recognizing, oh, actually, it is okay for me to start feeling. And sometimes we can feel like one area of our body a little bit more than another. For instance, maybe you really have a better awareness of, I can feel the tension in my shoulders now, but I still have a hard time feeling my pinky toe, whatever it may be. And so sometimes doing a brief body scan, what are the areas really calling out to us? What are those areas that we know are there, but we have a hard time connecting to, can be a really valuable, like brief body scan to start bringing more awareness to those subtle areas.
Yeah. A little bit more about Beth and her work is I saw that you're the founder of Trifecta Pilates and you have Trifecta Pilates app. I went to your website and folks, you need to go to the website. There's going to be information on the show notes of this, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. But tell us a little bit about Trifecta Pilates, if you would, Beth.
Trifecta Pilates, I created that because I realized that I was at a point in my life where I was working full time and I wanted to bring Pilates to more people. And I was considering opening up a brick and mortar Pilates studio. And I realized, you know, I can't even do that working full time, like going to a Pilates studio right now, but I'm still moving with Pilates. And the number one way I've been consistent with Pilates since I had my children many years ago was actually doing Pilates out of my own home, using my Pilates mat and very small pieces of equipment like a resistance band and weights. That is just so helpful and valuable. So I started Trifecta Pilates, honoring the integration of body, mind, and spirit as a way to make Pilates more convenient for people. And I have the membership and app now. There's also some classes that you can try out on YouTube. And I encourage people, just get started somewhere. Maybe it's with me on YouTube. Maybe it's directly within the membership and app. The difference is there's more classes available in the membership and app. We do live sessions as well. You can ask me questions. There's more opportunity for the learning and the understanding of the body rather than just a workout. So yes, I will get on my mat and do an amazing workout. But what makes a workout so amazing is really being able to customize it for yourself. And that's what I tell people is when they work out with me or with anyone else, like once you know kind of what the teacher is doing, think, how is this working for me? We don't have to try to copy what the teacher is doing. So if, for instance, I take someone else's class, I kind of see what they're doing and I realize that variation isn't for me today. I'm going to do something a little bit different. And that just comes with knowing your body, the exercises, and sometimes people hop right into variations that they know that they enjoy. And other times they'll go through like different programs that we have to learn that a little bit more, or ask me questions to kind of get some ideas with some different options that are more suitable for their body. Because the power of a good workout, especially Pilates, is the personalization. Just like when you do massage therapy, you don't give everyone the same massage. Like you may address similar areas of the body, but you may focus on things in a slightly different way. And that's exactly what we do when we move with Pilates as well.
Okay, so did I hear correctly? Obviously, you said that you have the live programs on, but is it both group and individual? So you do a group class, and then if somebody needs some individual work, you can do that too, or how do you work with that?
If someone wants individual private one-on-one sessions, they can definitely schedule those. That would be an additional cost. But right now is exclusive to people within the membership and app, because so many times as I'm working with someone one-on-one, I'll think of classes that would be really valuable for them to continue moving within the membership and app. Because here's the thing, even if you were to work with me 3 days a week, I would still want you to move in some way a little bit more with Pilates on the other days. It's not that it always has to be a workout or even 30 minutes in length, but it's what we've been talking about today. It's that small integration and infusion that makes sense for you. So for my early birds, maybe it's something first thing in the morning. For my night owls, maybe it's something in the evening. And for everyone, I recommend, how can we sprinkle this into the day a little bit more?
Yeah. And that's also important to be able to sprinkle it in throughout the day. And that's what we've been talking about all along is it's great to have those formalized times, and sometimes we need that organization because we can be a little ADHD from time to time, or our schedule is just off and we need to figure it out. So you've given people a lot of opportunities between doing your live classes, your membership, and also work on YouTube. And it just gives so many different opportunities for people. I commend you for that. I think it's great that you can do the work that you do. And at the same time, my goodness, you're a mom. That's a process. So when do you
It
have
is, and it's definitely been a joy and a journey for sure.
and you think about it, so you just know how to organize stuff. And I've my latest almost a mantra for me is that I've stopped being a slave to the clock and I allow the clock to be my slave. Because if you don't, it you just never get things done. I appreciate the hamster wheel thought as well because, in our society, and I've seen it change so much through the years, and I think it's amped up more, where that hamster wheel is now turbocharged, and it just seems to be that we're going faster and faster and faster, and you've mentioned a few times already today the importance of building the good foundation and build that good foundation so that you can accomplish the greater things. But you have to start with breath. You have to start with the simple. All of these things will come. And if you have the good foundation, the other stuff just comes so much better rather than rushing through. So, Beth, what does Beth do to create a better life for herself?
Even though we've been focusing a lot on Pilates and moving the body, really it's fostering more joy into the day. And I know for me that I can't have a joy-filled day if I don't feel good. So I try to incorporate what makes me feel good, not only with workouts, which I know are going to continue to give me the strength and energy, vitality for the future, but how am I fueling my body? How am I incorporating fun and not just waiting for an amazing vacation to have fun? I think too many people just say, oh, I'm going to just buckle down and bear through it. And I'm like, 3 months, I'm going on this vacation. I'm going to have a weekend getaway. Well, I don't want to wait 3 months or even 3 days to enjoy what I'm doing. And sure, sometimes there's like hustle and grind involved in our everyday, but if I'm not passionate about what I'm doing and finding pleasure in some way, then I know that something is a little bit off and I need to circle back and reconnect to how can I enjoy what I'm doing so that I can really lead my mission in life, which goes back to where we began, is I always want to feel good.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And let's take a moment now and let's talk about how people get in touch with Beth and the website is probably very simple, but anything you want to say about that?
It is very simple. You can find me at trifectapilates.com. If you wanted definitely to research more about the membership and app, if you wanted just to try out a workout, I always suggest you can find a workout on YouTube if you enjoy them. And the next logical step is the membership and app where we can really connect in real time.
Excellent. Beth, the time has flown. I really appreciate this. This has been a wonderful opportunity to just share as we have, and I really appreciate the wisdom that you've shared and gives us some really good beginnings and good foundational information to help us on our journey toward a better life. And that journey includes Pilates, and I really appreciate that. So, Beth Sandlin, thanks so much for being my guest today and helping us toward a better life.
Thanks so much, Kevin.
Thank you, Beth, for helping us with a better understanding about Pilates. Beth Sandlin can be contacted through her website, trifectapilates.com. That's trifectapilates.com. If you're seeking insights and advice on how to create a better life for yourself over and above the podcast, you can also visit the website, towardabetterlife.com. And you can also send any kind of request that you might have or questions to me, Kevin, at towardabetterlife.com. Join me next time on Toward a Better Life as I welcome Aidan Gabor. When Aidan was still a teenager, Department of Justice agents approached him with an ultimatum: spend his life in prison for racketeering, embezzlement, extortion, and conspiracy to commit murder, or become an undercover agent. What he did not expect was how his life would be changed toward the better. As I said earlier, if you enjoyed the episode or learned something good today, please consider following and subscribing to Toward a Better Life through your favorite podcast platform like Apple Podcast, Spotify, or Amazon, or whatever one that you might use. And be sure to leave a review. This helps the podcast more than I could say, and I would appreciate it very, very much if you do so. If you have any questions again, or if you'd like to be my guest, please write to me, Kevin, at towardabetterlife.com. That's Kevin at towardabetterlife.com. Until next time, enjoy your journey toward a better life.